Mistakes are always forgivable if one has the courage to admit them. Bruce Lee.
What's up, Strike Team? Welcome back to another episode of Strike Team Official, and today we are going to talk about 5 martial art myths that I used to believe. Now, the world of martial arts is filled with a bunch of crazy myths and fantasies, going from sending out Kamehameha waves to healing people with your mind. Okay, but this episode is only going to cover the martial art myths that I actually used to believe. That being said, I was never crazy enough to think that I could knock somebody out with a chi blast, at least not since I turned 12. Okay, so with that being said, just know this episode is not going to cover no-touch knockouts and things like that, because I am not an idiot. Let's start it off with myth number 1. The first one that I truly believed until maybe my senior year in high school or my freshman year of college, and that was that size doesn't matter. Anyone who has stepped into a martial arts school and has actually sparred can tell you that size definitely matters. Range is one of the most difficult things to overcome. I have had the opportunity to spar guys with significantly less actual experience or skill level than me. But if they learn to use their range well, having to overcome that difference depending on how big that gap is between, I'm not a very tall guy, I'm only about 5'7". So if I'm going up sparring a guy who's 6'3" and knows how to use his long jab, knows how to use his teep to keep me at range, that becomes a very difficult thing to overcome. You look at the UFC and you look at champions like Israel Adesanya, John Jones, and you look at that long, lengthy figure and how they're able to use it to their advantage. Range is deceptively important in combat. Also, if you're dealing with grappling situations, someone gets a hold of you, wants to grab you, lay his weight on you. The weight of a person also matters. Okay, if you're doing jiu-jitsu, wrestling, there's a reason these things have weight classes. You don't want to end up in a situation where a heavier guy's on top of you or leaning his body weight on you. That is a very tiring situation and just not somewhere you want to be. Also, more weight might also equate, not always, but might also equate to them having a very strong chin or able to take more shots like to the belly or something than you can, just able to deliver more power. Power is just mass times speed. So a bigger person who can still move kind of fast is going to be able to hit a lot harder than you. Okay, size is a huge factor in the martial art world that we do not give enough credence to because we don't want to. The fantasy of the little man being able to take down the big man is something that all of us smaller guys, such as myself, truly want to believe in. And it is possible for me to take down a bigger person. I'm not saying I can't do it. I'm just saying the difficulty level is not a straight line. It's exponential. The taller and bigger the guy is, the harder it becomes to beat him. The higher my skill level has to be in comparison to him. So it is definitely not a situation you want to be in, no matter how good you are. Okay, so the second myth I believed was the nose shot that killed. Okay, this belief was everywhere in traditional martial arts. It was ridiculous how many people thought this was a thing. Okay, the idea that I could take my palm, hit somebody directly up in the nose, and somehow break right here and shoot the cartilage or the bone up into the brain and kill somebody. That was the thought process. But what you find out is it's not even like a bone. It's like a cartilage thing right there. It doesn't break that way. It doesn't shoot up into your skull, into your brain. That doesn't happen, right? If it was easy enough to kill somebody by hitting somebody with an open palm to the nose, you'd probably see it in boxing or MMA or Muay Thai where someone accidentally does it with a jab. Okay? It doesn't exist. I don't think there's a single record of it anywhere. It is a straight myth. The mechanics of the nose don't even work like that. It's how it connects with the brain. It is just a straight myth. But it was so prevalent. I remember preaching that to people when I first started. I was like maybe a green belt, brown belt in karate. I remember going out telling people how I could kill you with that nose strike. I got that death touch in the hand. You know what I'm saying? So that was something that was a huge myth that is still kind of out there today. People still believe it, but I hate to tell you, it doesn't work like that. That is not true. Okay, so the third myth. You don't need to be strong or in shape to be an effective martial artist. Now, this was a myth that I firmly believed, and I think I was emotionally invested in believing it in high school. Because in high school, I was a very small guy. I went into college as 115 pounds. So you can only imagine how tiny and non-muscular I was. Okay, so I had a vested interest almost in saying that my technique can overcome any level of strength, right? And I wasn't necessarily a great martial artist at this time. I only had like a purple belt in one hap kuen do. Like, I wasn't a good martial artist, but I thought I knew something, like many of us do. And I would say, my little purple belt level of martial arts, my technique can outdo you because I know leverage, and I don't need strength. And that's the kind of stuff I would truly believe. And it comes from movies and pop culture. But anyone who takes a second and looks at martial artists who actually compete either against other martial artists, or anyone who has been in street fights, can tell you that being strong, being athletic, having endurance, being fast, these are all very, very important aspects within martial arts. Now, I will say the need for speed is probably the one area where traditional martial arts still holds the importance of athleticism, is being fast. Again, probably very much connected to movies. But you'll see a lot of these big-bellied masters, who will often talk about how their technique will overcome any need for physical conditioning and strength and things like that. And you'll have a lot of, let's say, people who come into the martial arts weak, and like myself, I don't mean that as an insult, I came into the martial arts weak, but instead of taking the time to truly develop and try to be strong, you want a shortcut, and you want to take, as many excuses as you possibly can to not train to the fullest of your potential, which will require you to become strong. And after high school, I really recognized that me being weak was not going to also allow me to be a high-level martial artist when it comes to being able to actually perform my techniques. And so I went and got in the gym and got strong and got athletic and started running and getting my core together and just becoming an all-around athletic individual. Athleticism will help your martial arts. It is an extremely important thing if you want to be actually capable of applying your martial arts against another trained person, or if you just end up in a dangerous situation on the streets. It's better to have that athleticism than not, okay? You could be a great martial artist technically, but if you can't physically pull off the moves, and you're not physically fast enough or strong enough or whatever, well then it was a waste of time, okay? So athleticism, strength, these things are important. If you're a martial artist, do not use it as an excuse to not be physically in shape. Okay, this is another good one. Number 4. This is a belief that I held for a very long time, especially because a lot of the people I train with around me kind of had the same mentality. And that is, older is automatically better, okay? The more you can trace the technique to some ancient master or philosophy of the past, the better the technique naturally is. Because, if it's connected to the past, it was connected to the old real warriors. And so, they must have had the best possible techniques. Okay, and so this whole older is better mindset that comes through traditional martial arts especially is really, really strong, and I highly disagree with it. Again, I think it comes a lot from that idea that, it comes from some kind of old warrior, and also the tradition in the East, in the Asian countries, is very respectful to the ancestors and the wisdom of the past, which is unlike the West, which is like kind of the opposite, And one thing I've recognized as I've watched martial arts evolve, and I've watched traditional martial arts become less respected, and I've seen what the modern stuff is doing, what it has really shown is that it's the same as technology. Leonardo da Vinci was a crazy genius inventor. That being said, his inventions today would just be out of date. Okay, and I'm not saying all martial arts are out of date, but what I'm saying is modern martial arts are consistently able to grow and advance. And the beauty of today's age is the way technology has allowed us to communicate with each other. Okay, a technique that works in Brazil can be sent to China and to America and Russia in a matter of moments just by putting it on the internet. And thus other martial artists can then learn and adapt and grow with that. Okay, these are benefits of today's martial arts that did not exist in the past. Martial arts is like science. You respect every step. You can stand on the shoulders of those who came before you, but it is constantly evolving. So I do not believe that the ancient martial arts systems are inherently better than the current ones, especially if you're dealing with a mutual combat situation where two people are knowingly going to come and fight each other with their hands. Okay, I think that has improved today, possibly to a higher level it's ever been in the history of the world. Okay, and the fifth one is the idea that a black belt makes you a master fighter. Now, I know a lot of the people who are watching my channel are martial artists, and so you should understand that in most cases, a black belt is the beginning of understanding of your system. It is the beginning of you being able to properly apply and understand what you are learning. Okay, having a black belt in most cases does not mean you're a phenomenal fighter. I would go as far as to say that 60% of the black belts I know are bad in actual combat. Okay, it's not a sign of your fighting ability. It's a sign of how much of your school's curriculum you actually know. And that can greatly differ depending on your school. You could be at a school that is highly focused on live kumite, live sparring, and be a phenomenal fighter. But you would also be at a school that is focused on traditional forms or traditional kata and has very little focus on bunkai or application. And in your school, you're a black belt, but that doesn't mean you can fight. And that's not a hate, because later on down the line, you may go and learn and develop your technique to another level and actually gain that skill set. But the black belt in and of itself is not a sign of mastery within fighting. Okay, it is a huge misconception. I remember it took me a very long time to actually get my first black belt. I'll explain to you guys, I'll explain that story at the end. But I remember I was already fighting. I'd already had a couple full contact fights. And I'd also been doing karate at this point for over 5 years. And I remember talking to people about martial arts and be like, oh, we got to watch out for her. You know, maybe you can learn something from that girl over there. She has a black belt in Taekwondo. Or maybe you can learn something from that person over there. They have a black belt in karate. Maybe they can teach you some moves for your next fight. And I'm not saying I couldn't have learned something from them. You can learn something from anybody. But within these conversations, what I would notice is the idea that having a black belt gives you as much, if not more, credibility for your ability to actually fight than someone who is actually going into a ring and actually fighting, which I personally find crazy. Okay, but it is a common thing that comes strongly from movies that the black belt makes you a ninja. Okay, and I also think this is a somewhat dangerous misconception, because this could come around and bite you in the butt. Martial arts, as it comes for self-defense, part of self-defense is the legality of defending yourself. If you have to defend yourself in a street and you do so successfully and you hurt somebody and you're now in, say, a court case where you have to explain that having your black belt doesn't mean you are so good that you should be able to take out him and his friends without hurting them, or something ridiculous like that, and why you shouldn't be charged extra almost for being some kind of deadly weapon on the street. It also leaves that old myth, I'll give you a little bonus one, that every black belt has to register their hands as deadly weapons, which I also think came from film. So again, another ridiculous myth. A black belt by itself does not mean that you're actually a high-level fighter. That being said, let me tell you guys about the story of me getting my black belt super late. So my instructor had offered to rank me to black belt, but in order to do so, she said I was skill-wise, she said I was there. But she wanted me to, because I was splitting my time between karate and like 2 or 3 other martial arts, she wanted me to really focus in on that style for maybe 6 months and come in and make sure I had like all the Japanese down, because I was awful at doing every technique using the Japanese names, make sure I knew all the formalities like when to bow and how to walk in and all that kind of stuff, so I could do the formality side within the test. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll do it. But then I got to fight, and the fight became more important. And then I, started training for something else, and another thing became more important. And I didn't stop training my karate, but I kept splitting my focus. And to be quite honest with you, getting the black belt wasn't a high priority on my list, because the moment my instructor told me my skill level was that of a black belt, if I'm being honest with you, I stopped caring about the actual physical black belt. To me, when my instructor said, "You are skilled enough to be a black belt," I was a black belt in my head. I was like, it is what it is. Because to me, all the black belt is a symbol of your personal skill. If I have the skill, who needs the belt? The belt just makes it's an ego trip, right? And as time went on, I just ended up not taking the test, and I kept training. I was treated as a black belt, respected as a black belt. I just wore my brown belt. And to me, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a problem. Because everyone in my dojo knew my skill level. And they all treated me as such. And because of that, I didn't care. And this only became an issue when I was looking for a side gig teaching martial arts. And I recognized that having black belt on your resume makes it easier for you to be seen as a martial art coach. Even if you're not technically teaching karate, it's just good to have on your resume. So I was like, "Hey, sensei, I think it's time for me to actually get this black belt thing done." And I went and I tested and I passed. And yeah, so I finally got my black belt years later. And that is why I was probably 4 to 5 years late to actually getting my Shodan rank in Wei-Shidu, which is kind of ridiculous. At this point, I do kind of regret taking that long, because I probably would be ranked a lot higher if I hadn't taken 5 extra years to actually take my first black belt test. But the past is the past. I don't encourage you to do the same thing I did, but there's a story. There is actually one more myth I want to touch on, but it's a big one and will very likely cause some serious arguments in the comment section. So I am going to wait and probably make an entire separate video for that one. So please like and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can be here when I do drop it, because it will be juicy. And half of you might want to, I don't know how everyone's going to feel about this. Half of you guys might really hate it. Half of you might love it. Who knows? You guys can let me know when I drop the video. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you next time. Peace.